Got it.
Welcome, brothers. We've just come out of the first group call, and really appreciating the depth of the journey so far, the openness of the hearts. And today, this kind of section, we want to talk around trauma, and trauma has become a popular word over the last few years. I just want to give a kind of understanding of what I mean when I say trauma. So trauma to me is something that's happened that's overwhelmed the nervous system beyond the capacity to integrate in that moment. So the important word here is capacity as well, that person, because the same event could happen to two people, and it can affect someone in a traumatic way, and the other person might not be as deeply affected. So it's not so much the event, but more the reaction in the body, the capacity to integrate in that moment. And if they can't integrate it, then it overwhelms the nervous system, and that can be a traumatic response. And the way I see it in this kind of shamanic model is there's a split, and in the psychological model, they say split in your psyche, but I say it splits the soul. So part of the soul kind of fractures off with pure souls, and then we have an experience, and a bit goes into this fear response, might be a freeze or a fight, and it kind of splits off from the psyche, splits off from the soul. So a big part of our journey is to allow these pieces to land through doing embodiment work. And by doing the embodiment work and staying connected to the body, it will increase our capacity to integrate something, to integrate this experience. And I know from my own experiences that once I've increased my capacity, then memories have come up, or experiences I've had in the past have come up from deep below, have been suppressed or repressed by into my subconscious. So really, what we're doing is we're increasing our capacity, and by doing that, we will allow deeper parts of our soul to land. And also wanting to speak into how there's a psychological kind of model of psychotherapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, any talk therapies, which are hugely beneficial, and they've made a huge difference to my life. And then there's somatic work, which is more embodiment work. And I guess the way that I like to look at it is through more of a shamanic kind of realms. And this is a model that Janine Marais presents. She holds this really beautifully. She's in the wisdom circle of ISTA. She's from the Red Temple of Australia. And she talks about this shamanic model where, I suppose I should explain more about shamanic. So when I say shamanic, I also mean spirituality, but more kind of grounded, earthy spirituality. So more to do with, in this case, like the elements or descent into earth, and also to do with like different energy bodies. So the way she talks about this model is the body is the earth, and we have the elements. So we have water, which can be flowing, or it can get blocked or stuck. We have air, which is obviously through breath, which again can become contracted or stuck. And we have fire, which warms the body, which melts the ice, which is the passion, which can either be dimmed, kind of repressed, or it can be raging, and it can overtake everything. And we have ether, which is the more kind of subtle, lighter, finer energies. So one of the way to look at trauma is that if one of these elements gets stuck in the body, then it's not moving freely or flowing, then this is like a response to fear. So dynamic, natural response is fight or flight. And this is fire. And then maybe this doesn't work, or there isn't a feeling of safety. And there's other responses like freeze. And I love the way Janine talks around this one. It's like the ice mother wrapping her cloak, wrapping herself around this young, vulnerable part that doesn't have the capacity in this moment to process the experience. to keep them safe, she actually comes in, and it's the wisdom of the body. This is actually incredibly intelligent. Then air obviously is breath, and that can become fast and labored, or if it's freeze, it can really, like, something happens, we can hold our breath and be like that with our breath, or it can become slow or just shallow. We can just breathe really high. So yeah, speaking to my own experience with freeze, I thought I was mainly fight or flight kind of response was the main one, and delving into this work 4 or 5 years ago, I actually realized how much freeze there was in my body. And as a man, then there was a part of me that didn't want that, or wasn't aware of the extent of it. And I do believe that underneath these layers is a beautiful, deep, precious feminine. It's our most tender parts. And by having, but we really need the fire to melt to get to the ice. So the fire is the rage, is the passion. And it's these parts that have been unheard or unseen or unfelt that need to move to allow this energy to go to even get to the ice. And then it's below the ice is this real tenderness. So that's just one model which I love, and it's kind of very more in the shamanics. But yeah, really feeling like underneath is this beautiful tender part. But the pieces need to be spoken. Their parts that have been hurt need to stand up in full force. And without the fire, we can't reach them, and can't reach them to then melt the ice.
Thank you, Robbie. I just want to jump in there actually around the I guess the difference between embodiment, or rather what you might call the shamanic way of working with trauma, and with talking therapy. So I've done both. I've really worked with both, and what I found was with talking therapy is that it kept on clearing the surface layers. It kept on clearing out the gutters almost, but actually the drain pipe that was raging underneath was still blocked. It was still actually unable to express itself. And so my personal response to trauma is often please. So actually what we're understanding now is there's actually more than just flight and fight. There's often fight, flight, freeze, and please. And so this is an invitation for you in this next week to begin to learn and to notice more. Maybe you've done some trauma work already, just to notice and to understand how you relate with the world when you're in a traumatic place. So what happens in your own body? Do you go into freeze? Does your root lock down? Does your base go into a place of paralysis where actually the life that is wanting to come through and actually ground you here so that your soul can be here more fully? What happens to your body in that situation? So personally, I go into either freeze or into please. I don't fight, I don't flight, I don't fight, and I don't run away. But I go into freeze first, and then I begin to please people. And what happens is when we have a freeze response in our bodies, fundamentally for me and for many of us, it actually is our root. So it really locks us and our sexual energy and our life force in our bodies. And as Robbie said, it can't begin to express itself. So what we'll also be introducing this week are a series of emotional release tools that you can begin to use with your own life. And these are very universally used emotional release tools to begin to unlock and to release the energy that's blocked in your body, whether it's fire, whether it's the water, whether it's the air. And it's really a way of getting back to that place where you know yourself from being turned on again by life. Because of how I see it is, when trauma comes, we want to hide ourselves away from the world. We want literally nothing more in that moment than to go into our cocoon, to go into our shells, to go into a place where I'm safe here. And this is a natural and beautiful and actually amazing way in which the body learns to keep itself safe. But if we want to become souls, need to begin doing is to learn how to build safety within the container of brothers, and also within the container of our own lives, in a way where we know that trauma is going to come up. You know, it's this is life. You know, we're always meeting trauma. Like, for example, like Robbie and I in this you know, build up to coming on this work, we had so much trauma coming up for us, and myself personally, around the dark masculine, and not feeling safe around the dark masculine, and feeling like I was going to be penetrated, and my body just shutting down, and then going to a place of like, it's your fault, what are you doing? And you know, that comes up, and it's going to come up in the group. And so what we want to do is have and build these foundational elements, so that when the trauma comes up, we can not to be like, oh, that's a bad thing, but to begin to move with it. And for me, what I want to bring in as well is the first part of this is not just to go in and clear your trauma, but it's about compassion and self-compassion. And I think actually I would love Robbie to speak into that first, as with an element of like, sometimes when we begin to use emotional release tools, we can use them like crack. We can use them like, shit, I'm traumatized right now. Like, fuck, what do I do? This is in a scary state. Right, I'm just going to release and go and begin to shake and move the energy. But that ultimately doesn't allow our nervous systems to settle and to integrate. So, Robbie, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, thanks. I love that. And it's a beautiful piece that, yeah, these parts that have been hurt and that have maybe not been seen need to be seen. The victim within us actually needs to be seen, needs to be heard. It's not a case of like, right, I'm past that. So it's really important to allow those spaces to have voice, to be seen, to be felt. And there's lots of movements out there right now, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, where the victims come up, and it's rightly so. These things are happening in society. There's also a piece that it doesn't stop there. So it's important to let them have a voice and let them come up, and we can move past them and move on. So the emotional release tools that we'll give you, some you're familiar with already, also need to work with the shamanics in the body. So if they're not, then the catharsis can be damaging to the body. It can be an emotional looping, and not penetrating the piece that's actually below it. So there's layers of the emotional body and deeper layers. And once this work happens and we just start doing it through the shamanics, then the stories and the beliefs are shift. Mm-hmm. Like the piece that we were working on, the thing that was going on, it's like, it's just not in the body anymore. And this is the beauty of these tools. It doesn't need to, and this is where the old psychological therapy, not the old, the psychological therapy is amazing, but it doesn't necessarily go through the piece. Because we haven't necessarily gone through the layers and brought expanded capacity and life force. Mm-hmm. So it's really like this cellular transformation, because everything's remembered from our experiences, from our childhood. Everything is in the subconscious of the body. So, and a lot of time these things can be really dictating our behavior still, mm-hmm. Consciously or unconsciously. So this is an opportunity to rewrite our DNA, rewrite our cellular makeup, and we're in a container, in a space that all is welcome. We can bring this together and collapse these parts together.
I want to add something there, Robbie, which is, and this feels vulnerable, and this feels like a bit of ownership, and like I've noticed the part of me that doesn't want to bring this is like, but it's coming. And it's that, you know, we want to hold on to these bits so fucking strongly. You know, these were like, we will do anything, literally anything, to hold on to these bits. And, you know, one of my core stories as a man as a man in this body, in this male body, is that I'm not safe with other male bodies. Like, I cannot trust them. And this is playing out within my own life, and it's playing out with everyone's life. And I think many of the humans in this container. And yeah, in my own story, what I've had so many times is like when I've let go of that, or not even let go of it, just like move the piece of trauma that's there, and feeling it come up into my throat now, like move the piece which is there. It's almost, there's a bit of shame that comes afterwards, which is like almost like a, oh, I actually don't see this as the reality anymore. But what happens now? And what happens is actually a field of love is created, because we begin to notice as a group that all these things come up. And sometimes if they come up again and again and again and again, which they might well do within this container, as Robbie and I know have from previous containers, this happens. And at the end of it, after all this, what happens often is it's just easier to love. Like, after all the exhaustion of the personality and the trauma body moving and experiencing itself, it actually becomes easier just to love. And that is the invitation which we are asking and inviting the group to step onto now. This is the first breadcrumb of this week that we're going into. And this is an important step to take and to anchor within our own journey, within the collective journey of the group, and also how we step out into the world. So when we go out this week and we meet our traumas and we meet our demons, because we're calling them in, like they're going to come, like this is what we, this is the ship that we've invited in to do this work in our own lives. So we have this support in the group container. Wow, I'm really passionate about this, it seems, Robbie. Yeah, anything else you want to add?
No, just beautifully, just love the way you've gone there with that, because I can feel how much our stories we can get attached to. Our egoic makeup can want us to be a certain way, and it doesn't necessarily want change. So there can be a lot of resistance coming up when we start doing things differently. And I love the piece you're sharing when, like, suddenly the thing that was so fucking driving, like, passion and like all this rage about, suddenly just, oh, I feel a bit exposed and vulnerable, because what was I making a big thing about? It's because the capacity of our being has expanded. It's actually fucking beautiful that now the thing that used to be like hidden or shameful or not be capable of being expressed, or used to create such a reaction in my body, is now also like, oh fuck, I bet, it's like, oh, was it really that thing? Which so I'm just loving the loop that it's come back round in. This is a space where we're creating safety for these parts to be exposed. The encouragement as we go into these circles is to bring these parts. And it's amazing when we give them voice and we pour them out there, the separation that sometimes we can imagine they're creating, because it's only me that's got this thing, and it gets collapsed. We're all having this human experience. And it's just a case of the more we can expose ourselves, the more we can share our heart, the more we can be vulnerable, the more we can be connected and realize the oneness.
Beautiful. So on that note, if you're watching this as the main transmission, which we'll probably go through first, what I'd also like to draw your attention towards are the other things that we're asking you to do this week. And there's 5 things, in fact, which we're asking you to do this week, if you haven't already done them already. And this is a really important way of setting the container, setting the group. So to build an altar, to please watch Nemanya's video on what it means to build an altar, and to take the time over this week to do it. Please take a land journey. And by land journey, for me, I mean going out and connecting with the world and being curious about what is there in the natural environment, in the earth of our bodies, as Robbie was saying, to support our bodies and our souls on this journey. Number 4 is please do the recorded transmission to Slack. And number 5 is, if you haven't yet filled in the longer application form, or basically where we get to know more about you and about your journey, please do that, because those are really important parts to the journey for us to get to know you as brothers, and so we can help integrate you into the wider group and know what you're going through as you go into this process. Thanks so much, bros.
I think you missed 3.
What did I miss? 3?
I think you said you went 2 to 4. But there's also going to be a bathing ritual.
Bathing ritual. I knew there's one.
And also to add to that, we're going to have pods and buddies, and we're going to shamanically work that out and let you know about that as well. So yeah, plenty of juice to keep alive with this week. As we've said, if there's anything that's coming up, any awareness or anything that's significant in your life, then please feel free to share it with us, because it will it will help unite our field even deeper.
Yeah. And on that final note, like, this is a group responsibility. Like, it isn't just a few of us bringing things. Like, really, it's an invitation to step in as a group together and create this field. Because and this is the last final thing I want to say, is no man rests until every other man's soul is ignited. And that is the core purpose of this group. And we are all responsible as a collective together for that. Okay, Robbie, I think that's enough for now. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome, guys.
All right, guys.
Thanks so much.
See you soon.